Commander Lori Winters gazed out the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Earthborn as it descended toward the massive structure suspended in space, the Hall of Worlds, headquarters of the Galactic Council. 300 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Council. 3 centuries of being the newcomers, the upstarts, the species kept at arm's length from the inner workings of galactic governance. The planet-sized station loomed larger as they approached, its crystalline spires and massive rings catching the light of the binary stars that served as the neutral meeting point for the 217 species represented in the Council. From this distance it looked majestic, perfect, a monument to interspecies cooperation spanning 50,000 years. Lori knew better. Behind that gleaming facade lay 300 years of patronizing treatment, technology restrictions, and the systematic suppression of humanity's potential. Today, that would end. "Commander, we'll dock in 15 minutes," said Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez from the pilot seat. Unlike Lori, whose emotions were carefully contained behind her commander's mask, Maria made no attempt to hide her anticipation. Her dark eyes gleamed with the same fire that had propelled her through the ranks of Earth's defense forces. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Lori replied, smoothing the front of her formal diplomatic uniform. The insignia of Earth's independent government, a stylized globe surrounded by a laurel wreath, gleamed on her chest. Not the Galactic Council emblem that adorned the uniforms of human diplomats for generations. This subtle difference had already been noted by the docking authorities, who had fallen silent when they scanned the approaching vessel. Behind her, the 3 other members of the Earth delegation were engaged in last-minute preparations. Paul Gregory, Earth's ambassador to the Council for the past 15 years, was reviewing notes on his datapad, his silver hair catching the starlight. Despite having represented humanity in the Council chambers for so long, he had agreed with Earth's decision without hesitation. "They've had 3 centuries to accept us as equals," he had said during the final planning session on Earth. "Their time is up." Beside him sat Kate Murphy, science director for the delegation. Her brilliant mind had been instrumental in reverse engineering Council technology, despite the restrictions placed on humanity. Her work had confirmed what many had suspected. The Council was deliberately keeping Earth from accessing technologies that would allow true independence. Daniel Ford, security chief for the delegation, stood at the back of the cabin, his tall frame tense as he scanned external sensor data. His military background made him the most skeptical of the group, convinced that the Council might respond with force to their unprecedented action today. "5 minutes to docking," Maria announced. "Council security vessels have taken up positions around us. Standard procedure, but they've sent twice the usual number." "They suspect something," Daniel said, his hand instinctively moving to the ceremonial sidearm that was permitted for security personnel. "The change in our insignia, the formal request for an emergency session. They know this isn't a routine visit." Lori nodded. "It wouldn't matter if we arrived in a cargo hauler or with a full military escort. After today, nothing will be the same." The ship slowed as it approached the massive docking bay reserved for member species diplomatic vessels. As the Earthborn settled onto its designated platform, Lori addressed her team one final time. 300 years ago, humanity was brought into the Galactic Council as the youngest member species. We were told it was an honor, that we would benefit from the collective wisdom of races that had traveled the stars while our ancestors were still using stone tools. Instead, we discovered that the Council is not a brotherhood of equals, but a hierarchy where newcomers are kept firmly in their place. She looked at each member of her team. "Today, we change that. Not just for Earth, but perhaps for all the younger species who have been denied their rightful place in galactic affairs." The ship's ramp extended, revealing the cavernous docking bay beyond. A delegation of Council officials waited, led by a tall, willowy figure whose skin shifted between shades of blue and green. Zarelian, the High Speaker of the Council, and representative of one of the founding species. The Zarelians had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves, a fact they never failed to mention in council sessions. As Lori led her team down the ramp, she noted the subtle shift in Zarelian's skin toward a deeper blue, a sign of suspicion among his kind. The High Speaker's forearms were folded in the formal greeting posture, but his upper set betrayed tension. "Commander Winters." Zarelian's voice was melodious, yet carried a note of steel. "The Council acknowledges Earth's request for an emergency session. This is unusual." "High Speaker." Lori inclined her head in the prescribed manner for junior species, the last time she would perform the gesture. "Earth thanks the Council for accommodating our request. The Council exists to serve all member species," Zarelian replied, the diplomatic platitude at odds with the reality Lori had experienced during her years of service. "Though we note your delegation appears to have adopted new insignia, a departure from protocol." Paul Gregory stepped forward. "A reflection of the matters we wish to address today. High Speaker." A flicker of darker blue crossed Zarelian's skin. Concern, perhaps even alarm. "The Council chamber awaits. The senior members have been informed of your request and are assembled." The walk through the Hall of Worlds would normally inspire awe in visitors. The massive central corridor stretched for kilometers, lined with artifacts and monuments from civilizations spanning the galaxy. Holographic displays showcased the achievements of council members throughout history. Lori had walked this hall many times, but today she noticed something she had previously overlooked: how few of the displays featured achievements from the newer member species. The history presented here was overwhelmingly that of the founding species and their close allies. Humanity's contributions were relegated to a small section near the far end, alongside other developing civilizations. As they approached the council chamber, Zarelian paused before the massive doors made from wood, harvested from trees that had gone extinct 10,000 years ago, a deliberate symbol of the council's ancient lineage and authority. "Commander, the full council rarely convenes for matters brought by..." He hesitated. "Newer members. I hope the urgency you've claimed is warranted." "I assure you, High Speaker," Lori replied, meeting his compound eyes directly. "After today, no one will question the importance of this session." The ancient doors swung open silently, revealing the vast circular chamber beyond. Tiered seating rose in concentric rings, arranged according to the hierarchy that defined council membership. The founding species occupied the innermost ring, closest to the central speaking platform. Subsequent rings represented decreasing status and influence, with humanity's seats located in the outermost ring, alongside species that had joined the council within the last millennium. The chamber was filled to capacity, unusual for a session called by a junior member. Representatives from all 217 species were present, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic biodiversity. Some resembled insects, others were gelatinous or crystalline, while many were vaguely humanoid despite evolving on worlds light years apart. Zarelian led them to the central platform, then ascended to his position in the innermost ring. The High Speaker's role was to moderate council proceedings, though Lori knew the position was never held by anyone other than a member of the founding species. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," Zarelian announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "Commander Lori Winters, you may address the assembly." Lori stepped onto the platform, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. The central position was designed to make junior speakers feel exposed and subordinate. Today, she would use it to make history. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady. "For 300 years, humanity has been honored to be part of this august body. We have learned much from our elder species and have strived to contribute to the collective prosperity of galactic civilization. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber at these expected diplomatic pleasantries. Today, however, I stand before you not to seek the Council's wisdom or approval, but to deliver a formal notification. The murmurs ceased, replaced by a tense silence. By unanimous decision of Earth's independent government, and in accordance with Article 157 of the Council Charter, I hereby submit humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence shattered. Dozens of translation devices activated simultaneously as representatives conferred with their delegations. The inner ring, where the founding species sat, erupted in agitated movement. Zarelian's skin had turned a deep indigo, a sign of shock among his kind. "Order!" Zarelian's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander Winters, what you propose is unprecedented. No species has ever voluntarily withdrawn from the Council in its 50,000-year history. Nevertheless, High Speaker, Article 157 explicitly provides for this possibility. Our legal experts have confirmed that while unused, the provision remains valid." Paul Gregory stepped forward, activating his datapad. "We have prepared the formal documentation, including the required declarations and certifications. Earth has fulfilled all obligations required for withdrawal, including settlement of outstanding resource commitments and technological licensing agreements." Kate Murphy added, "We have also included detailed provisions for the orderly transition of all Council facilities on Earth and in Earth-controlled space to independent status." The chamber erupted again, this time with multiple representatives attempting to speak simultaneously. A tall, crystalline being, the representative of the Quarthy, another founding species, rose from the inner ring. "Point of order, High Speaker. While Article 157 technically exists, it was included in the Charter as a theoretical provision. It was never intended to be invoked." "Intention does not override the letter of the law," Lori countered. "Earth has meticulously followed every requirement for withdrawal. Our decision is not subject to Council approval." Zarelian's upper arms moved in a gesture of agitation. "Commander, surely there are grievances that can be addressed without taking such a drastic step. The Council has always been willing to hear the concerns of all members. With respect, High Speaker, Earth's concerns have been presented to this body repeatedly over the past century. Each time, they have been acknowledged, studied by committees, and ultimately dismissed or indefinitely delayed." Lori activated her own datapad, projecting a holographic display visible to the entire chamber. 342 formal petitions regarding technology restrictions, 187 requests for expanded voting rights, 75 applications for representation in the Council's inner committees, all denied or indefinitely delayed. The display shifted to show statistical comparisons. Species that joined the Council centuries after humanity have been granted technologies denied to Earth. Trade routes that bypass human space have been given priority development. Defense systems that would protect Earth from external threats have been deemed unnecessary, despite similar systems being approved for worlds with comparable security profiles. The Quarthy representatives' crystalline form vibrated, their equivalent of indignation. "These are complex matters that require careful consideration. The Council cannot simply... The Council can and does make such decisions regularly for favored species." Paul interrupted, his diplomatic veneer cracking slightly. "We have documented thousands of instances where comparable requests from other junior members were approved, while Earth's were denied." A new voice joined the debate, a representative from the second ring, a Vulgarian whose gaseous form swirled with agitation inside their containment suit. "High Speaker, Earth's accusations have merit. Many of us in the middle tiers have experienced similar treatment." This statement caused another wave of murmurs. Lori noticed several representatives from the outer rings, nodding, or making equivalent gestures of agreement. Zarelian's skin had shifted to a mottled pattern of blue and green. Uncertainty. "Commander Winters, Ambassador Gregory, Even if these concerns are valid, withdrawal is an extreme response that will have serious consequences for Earth and its people. Council protection, trade networks, technological exchange, all would cease. We are aware of the implications, Lori replied. Earth has spent the past decade preparing for independence. We have developed alternative trade relationships with individual member species who share our concerns about Council governance. Our defensive capabilities, while restricted by Council mandate, are sufficient for our immediate security needs. Daniel Ford stepped forward. Furthermore, our intelligence suggests that several other junior and middle-tier species are watching these proceedings with great interest. Earth may be the first to invoke Article 157, but we doubt we will be the last. This statement sent a visible shock through the chamber. Zarelian conferred rapidly with other members of the inner ring, his skin fluctuating between colors so quickly that it created a strobe-like effect. After several minutes of consultation, Zarelian addressed the chamber again. The Council will recess for 1 standard hour to consider this unprecedented situation. The Earth delegation is requested to remain in the antechamber. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many cast curious or concerned glances toward the Earth delegation. Lori noticed representatives from several other junior species attempting to approach them, only to be intercepted by Council security. In the antechamber, a grand hall, decorated with artifacts from the founding species' homeworlds. The Earth delegation gathered in a corner, speaking in hushed tones. "They're panicking," Daniel observed. "They never expected anyone to actually use Article 157. "The support from the Vulgarian was unexpected," Paul said. "And did you see how many of the Outer Ring representatives seem to agree with us? The Council may be facing more discontent than we realized." Kate checked readings on her specialized datapad. "They've established a damping field around this room. They're trying to prevent us from communicating with our ship or with Earth." Lori nodded. "Standard procedure when they're afraid of information leaking. It won't matter. The declaration has been officially entered into the Council record. Even if they reject it, which they legally cannot, the message has been delivered." Before they could continue their discussion, a side door opened, and Zarelian entered, accompanied only by a single security officer. His skin had settled into a deep teal, a color Lori had never seen on a Zarelian before. "Commander Winters, may I speak with you privately?" Lori glanced at her team, then nodded. "Ambassador Gregory will accompany me." Zarelian led them to a small conference room, adjacent to the antechamber. Once the door closed, his formal demeanor changed subtly. 300 years is but a moment in Council history," he began, his voice lacking its usual amplified quality. "You must understand that by the standards of the founding species, humanity has barely begun its journey among the stars." "With respect, High Speaker," Paul replied. "That perspective is precisely the problem. The Council operates on timescales that may suit species with lifespans of millennia, but are fundamentally incompatible with human experience." "And yet patience has served the galaxy well," Zarelian countered. "The stability of the Council has prevented interspecies conflict for 50,000 years. "Stability or stagnation?" Lori asked. "From our perspective, the Council's hierarchy preserves the power and privilege of the founding species while limiting the potential of newer members." Zarelian's upper arms made a gesture that Lori had never seen before, something between resignation and frustration. "You are not wrong, Commander, but you cannot understand the fears that drive the inner ring. Each new spacefaring species represents both opportunity and threat. Some of the founders remember civilizations that rose quickly, expanded aggressively, and collapsed catastrophically, leaving devastation across multiple star systems. So humanity is being held back because of events that occurred before we even mastered fire?" Paul asked, incredulously. "Partially," Zarelian admitted, "but also because your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and technological innovation, In 3 centuries, you have advanced more rapidly than any species in recent council history. This concerns the founders. Lori leaned forward. So we're being punished for our potential. Not punished, guided, restricted where necessary to ensure stable development. That is not the Council's right, Lori stated firmly. Each species must determine its own path. Zarelian's skin shifted again, patches of yellow appearing, a color Lori couldn't interpret. The inner ring has authorized me to offer concessions, accelerated technology transfers in key areas, expanded voting rights on trade and cultural exchanges. Even consideration for moving Earth's representation to the third ring within the next century. Paul laughed quietly. A century. My grandchildren would be elderly before seeing any meaningful change in our status. It is a generous offer by council standards, Zarelian insisted. It is too little. Too late, Lori replied. Our declaration stands. Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Zarelian's forearms dropped to his sides. Then, I must inform you that the Council has voted to accept your declaration, with certain provisos. All Council technologies currently in use by Earth must be returned or decommissioned. All Council facilities on Earth will be evacuated within 1 standard month. And, his voice took on a formal tone. Earth will lose all protection under the Council Defense Accord. You will be on your own in a galaxy with threats you cannot imagine. We anticipated these terms, Lori said. Earth accepts them. Then it is done. Zarelian moved toward the door, then paused. In my 800 years of life, I have never witnessed a species voluntarily leave the Council. I find myself curious about what will become of humanity. As are we, Lori replied. But we would rather face the unknown on our own terms than remain permanently subordinate. When they returned to the antechamber, Lori briefed the rest of the delegation on the outcome. Within the hour, they were escorted back to their ship without further ceremony. No formal announcement was made to the reconvened council. Their departure would be recorded in the official minutes, without comment. As the Earthborn pulled away from the Hall of Worlds, Lori watched the massive structure recede through the viewport. Send the confirmation signal to Earth, she instructed Maria. Operation Independence is complete. Yes, Commander. Maria's fingers flew over the communication controls. Message sent on secure channels. We should receive acknowledgement within 20 minutes. Kate joined Lori at the viewport. 300 years under the Council's thumb ended in a single day. The easy part is over, Daniel remarked from his security station. Now, we have to survive on our own. Lori nodded. We've made history today, but the real work begins when we reach Earth. The transition won't be simple or painless. None of them could have predicted just how painful it would be. The first month after Earth's withdrawal passed in a flurry of activity. Council representatives departed from facilities across the planet and in orbital stations. Ships carrying Council technology and personnel formed a steady stream, leaving the solar system. Some humans who had built careers within the Council framework chose to leave with them, unwilling to give up the relative stability of Council service. Alan Bennett, Earth's Trade Commissioner, found himself working 18-hour days trying to establish alternative supply chains for resources that had previously come through Council networks. His office in the new Geneva complex had become a war room, walls covered with projections of shipping routes and supply forecasts. We've secured direct agreements with the Vulgarians and Nithar for critical minerals, he reported during a daily briefing with Earth's transition team. But 14 essential pharmaceuticals remain unavailable without Council medical synthesis technology. Lori, who had been appointed transition coordinator upon her return to Earth, studied the holographic display showing shortages spreading across multiple sectors. How long until our own production can fill the gaps? 6 months for basic replacements, years for some of the more advanced compounds. Alan ran a hand through his thinning hair. We anticipated most of these issues, But the Council moved faster than expected in terminating access to shared databases. Our medical researchers lost reference materials they were counting on. Olivia Carter, the health director, nodded grimly. We're prioritizing alternatives and substitutions. No one will die from these shortages. But there will be discomfort and complications for patients with certain conditions. The people were prepared for hardship, Lori reminded them. The independence referendum passed with 68% support, despite all warnings about transitional difficulties. Support is still strong, confirmed Jason Hill, Public Information Director. But we're seeing the first signs of concern in population centers, most dependent on Council technology. The disruption to the Galnet communications network has been particularly troubling for families with relatives off-world. This had been one of the most immediate consequences of withdrawal. The faster-than-light communication network that linked Council worlds had been partially disabled for Earth. While ships could still carry messages, the instantaneous communication that humans had taken for granted was now limited to Earth and its closest colonies. Lieutenant Rodriguez has an update on the defense situation, Lori said, turning to Maria, who had been promoted to oversee the transition of Earth's defensive systems. Maria activated her own display, showing the solar system and its defensive perimeter. The Council has withdrawn all shared defense assets as scheduled. Our independent systems are operational, but we have significant gaps in our long-range detection network. Vulnerabilities? Daniel Ford asked, now serving as Chief of Security for the transition government. 3 major blind spots in the outer system. We're deploying our reserved sensor satellites, but they won't be in position for another 2 weeks. Maria's expression was grave. Until then, we'd have minimal warning of any approach from those vectors. Do we anticipate hostile action from the Council? Jason asked. Lori shook her head. Not directly. The Council rarely acts with military force. But there are independent operators, pirates, mercenaries, opportunists, who might see our transitional weaknesses as an opportunity. We've also detected unusual communication patterns among some of the junior Council species, Daniel added. Our intelligence suggests at least 7 other species are considering following our example. This news caused a stir around the table. Alan whistled softly. The Council must be in chaos. Good, Kate Murphy said firmly. Their monopoly on galactic governance needs to end. 300 years of carefully controlled technology transfers, while they kept the real advancements for themselves. Speaking of technology, Lori turned to Kate. How are we progressing with the independent development projects? Kate's eyes lit up with excitement, the first positive emotion anyone had displayed during the meeting. Better than projected. Without Council restrictions, our research teams have made remarkable progress, particularly in propulsion and energy generation. We've confirmed that certain theoretical limitations the Council insisted were immutable are actually quite surmountable. She activated a holographic display showing a new engine design. This prototype achieves 120% of the efficiency of comparable Council drives, using principles our physicists developed independently. We were on the right track before Council advisors steered us away from these approaches, claiming they were dangerous tangents. How soon until we can deploy these technologies? Lori asked. The propulsion systems could be ready for testing within 6 months. Energy generation will take longer, perhaps 18 months for full implementation. Lori nodded, feeling a surge of pride in humanity's resilience and ingenuity. That's excellent news. If we can demonstrate technological self-sufficiency, it strengthens our position for any future negotiations with the Council or individual member species. As the meeting continued, reports from around the globe and from Earth's colonial outposts in the solar system painted a consistent picture. Difficulties and adjustments, but no insurmountable crises. Humanity was weathering the transition better than many had feared. Then came the first sign that something was wrong beyond Earth's borders. 3 months after withdrawal, A merchant vessel arrived from the Proxima Centauri colony, Earth's most distant outpost. The ship had been en route when Earth left the Council and had continued its scheduled journey to the edge of Council space before returning. Captain Melanie Ward's report was troubling. The Council trading post at Proxima has been abandoned, not just by Council officials. Everyone is gone. We found the facility intact but completely deserted. Could they have been evacuated as part of the withdrawal process? Jason suggested. Melanie shook her head. The Proxima post served 17 species, not just humans. There's no reason for non-Earth personnel to leave. And there were signs of a hasty departure. Personal belongings left behind, systems left running. More concerning were her observations from the journey home. We passed 3 automated distress beacons from Council vessels. Standard protocol would have these responded to immediately by Council security. But they appeared to have been active for weeks without attention. Communications disruptions? Alan suggested. Possibly. But we also observed unusual stellar activity along our route. 2 navigation beacons were offline, due to radiation spikes that didn't match any normal solar patterns. Kate frowned. What kind of radiation patterns? Unlike anything in our database, the energy signatures were structured, almost like they contained information. This caught everyone's attention. Kate and Maria exchanged concerned glances. Show me, Kate demanded. Melanie transferred the sensor logs from her ship to the central display. The radiation patterns appeared as complex, shifting waves that pulsed with an almost organic rhythm. That's not natural, Kate murmured, studying the display intently. Those patterns show signs of artificial modulation. A communication system? Lori asked. Maybe, or a side effect of some unknown technology. Kate's fingers moved rapidly over her controls, analyzing the data. The energy density is remarkable. Whatever generated this was incredibly powerful. Daniel's expression darkened. Powerful enough to disable Council navigation beacons? Those are hardened against everything from solar flares to military-grade weapons. We need more information, Lori decided. Maria, prepare a reconnaissance mission to investigate these anomalies. Kate, I want a full analysis of these energy patterns. Daniel, contact any friendly species who might share intelligence about Council activities since our departure. As the meeting dispersed, Lori felt a growing unease. Earth's withdrawal from the Council had been planned as a political statement, a declaration of independence from an organization that had restricted human potential for centuries. They had expected economic disruption and diplomatic isolation, but not mysterious abandonments and unknown energy phenomena. Over the next few weeks, more troubling reports arrived. 3 Council trading vessels entered Earth's solar system, seeking emergency supplies and repairs. Their captains reported widespread communications failures throughout Council space, with entire sectors going dark. The Council is downplaying the situation, reported the captain of a Bulgarian merchant ship. Official channels claim it's a temporary disruption caused by solar activity, but we've seen Council military vessels mobilizing near the Galactic rim. Daniel brought intelligence from his contacts among other species. Something has the Council frightened. The Nithar ambassador told me privately that the founding species have recalled their scientific expeditions from the outer reaches of the galaxy. There are rumors of unknown vessels being detected beyond the normal patrol routes. Maria's reconnaissance mission returned with more questions than answers. The abandoned outposts they investigated showed no signs of conflict, just rapid evacuation. More concerning were additional readings of the strange energy patterns, now detected across a wider area. They're spreading, Kate confirmed, showing the progression on a galactic map. And intensifying. The patterns are becoming more complex, more coherent. Like they're refining a message, Maria suggested. Or gathering strength, Daniel added grimly. Lori studied the map, noting how the phenomena seemed to be advancing from the galactic rim toward the more densely populated regions. Whatever this is, the Council knows more than they're telling anyone. And despite everything, Earth needs to know what we're facing. The decision to re-establish contact with the Council was not made lightly. Earth's government debated for days before authorizing Lori to lead a diplomatic mission back to the Hall of Worlds. The Earthborn departed with minimal fanfare, carrying a small delegation including Kate Murphy, whose expertise on the energy phenomena would be crucial. Their arrival at the Hall of Worlds revealed a dramatically changed situation. The once bustling docking bay was nearly empty, with security checkpoints undermanned or abandoned entirely. Council officials hurried through the corridors with none of their usual ceremonial dignity. Zarelian received them in a small meeting room, rather than the Grand Council chamber. His skin was a pale, washed-out blue that Lori had never seen before. "Commander Winters, I did not expect to see Earth representatives return so soon. We've observed concerning phenomena that appear to be affecting Council space," Lori said, dispensing with diplomatic niceties. Unknown energy patterns, abandoned outposts, disrupted communications. Zarelian's skin rippled briefly with patches of darker blue. "These matters are internal Council concerns. They won't remain internal if they continue to spread. The patterns we've detected are advancing toward Earth space." Kate presented the data they had gathered. Zarelian studied it, his compound eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of distress among his species. "The timing of Earth's withdrawal was unfortunate," he finally said. "Had we known what approached, perhaps matters would have proceeded differently." "What is approaching?" Lori pressed. Zarelian seemed to age before their eyes, his tall frame sagging slightly. "We call them the Void Heralds. They emerge from the deep spaces between galaxies once every 50,000 years. Coinciding with the formation of the Council," Kate noted immediately. "Yes, the Council was not formed solely for governance. Commander Winters, it was created as a defense against an existential threat. The founding species learned this lesson through devastating losses in the previous cycle." Zarelian activated a holographic display, showing images that chilled Lori to her core. Crystalline vessels of impossible geometry, emitting the same energy patterns they had detected. Worlds surrounded by webs of dark energy that seemed to drain them of life. Species unlike any in Council records, with forms that seemed to shift between states of matter. The Void Heralds are not conquerors in any sense we understand. They harvest energy, information, life itself. All are collected and taken back to the spaces between galaxies. Their technology operates on principles that even the founding species cannot fully comprehend. "And they're returning now," Lori stated, the implications becoming clear. "They have already breached the outer detection networks. The energy patterns you've observed are their method of communication, and their weapon. It disrupts our technology, interferes with our biology. Prolonged exposure can affect cognitive functions, leading to panic, paranoia, or complete psychological breakdown." "That explains the abandoned outposts," Kate said quietly. "Many outlying stations were evacuated when the first effects were detected. Others." Zarelian's skin darkened. "Others, we lost contact with completely." "Why keep this secret?" Lori demanded. "If this threat is so severe, why not inform all Council species?" "To prevent panic. To maintain the authority structure that has successfully repelled the Heralds before." Zarelian's tone hardened. "The Council's restrictions on technology transfer, on military development, on resource allocation, all were designed to ensure that when the Heralds returned, we would have a coordinated response under centralized control." Lori felt a cold anger building within her. "You restricted humanity's development because of a threat you never bothered to tell us about? You kept us vulnerable and ignorant in the name of protection?" "It was the consensus of the founding species that newer members would not have the perspective to understand the necessity of our methods," Kate interjected before Lori could respond. "These energy patterns. Our scientists have already begun developing countermeasures based on our independent research that the Council actively discouraged." Zarelian's compound eyes fixed on Kate with new interest. What kind of countermeasures? Adaptive shielding that responds to pattern changes. Communication systems that operate on principles different from Council standard. We developed them out of necessity when we began preparing for independence. For the first time, Lori saw something like respect in Zarelian's posture. Perhaps the very independence that we feared might offer unexpected advantages. We need to know everything about these Void Heralds, Lori stated firmly. Not sanitized information, not partial truths. Everything. Earth deserves to know what we're facing. Zarelian hesitated, then nodded. The full Council is assembling for an emergency session to coordinate our response. As Earth is no longer a member, you cannot participate officially, but I will ensure you receive all relevant information. That's not enough, Lori said. Earth needs a voice in this discussion, not as a Council member, but as an independent power with a stake in galactic survival. Impossible. The Council Charter has no provision for non-member participation. Then create one, Lori insisted. Or watch as more species follow Earth's example when they learn you've been hiding existential threats from them. The threat of further defections struck home. Zarelian's skin swirled with conflicting colors before settling into a determined green. I will propose a special observer status for Earth during this crisis. It is unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times. When the Emergency Council session convened the next day, the chamber was only half filled. Many representatives from outlying systems had been unable to reach the Hall of Worlds due to the spreading disruptions. Earth's delegation was seated in a newly created section, neither part of the Council rings, nor excluded from the proceedings. The session confirmed their worst fears. The Void Heralds had bypassed multiple defense systems and were advancing toward the more densely populated regions of the galaxy. Their crystalline vessels seemed impervious to conventional weapons, and their energy fields disrupted Council technology with increasing effectiveness. The collective defense network must be fully activated, insisted the Quarthy representative. All available resources must be directed to the primary containment strategy. Lori noted how many of the junior species representatives shifted uncomfortably at this announcement. When a Nithar spoke up, she understood why. The defense network protects primarily the core worlds of the founding species. Outer territories will be sacrificed under the primary containment strategy, as they were in previous cycles. This sparked an uproar among the Outer Ring representatives. The Council's unified front was fracturing under pressure, revealing the self-interest that had always lurked beneath its claims of collective security. During a recess, Kate approached Lori with urgent news. I've analyzed the complete data on the Herald's energy patterns. There's something the Council either doesn't know or isn't sharing. What is it? The patterns aren't just weapons or communications. They're probes, testing for responses, adapting to resistances, and they're focusing on Council standard technologies. Systems that deviate from Council specifications seem to confuse them temporarily. Lori's mind raced with the implications. Because the Council standardized technology across all member species. They created a single point of vulnerability, Kate finished. Different approaches. Independent developments might have created technological diversity that would be harder for the Heralds to counter. When the session resumed, Lori requested and was granted permission to address the Council. Standing on the central platform, she faced the diminished but still imposing assembly. The Void Heralds exploit the very standardization that the Council has enforced for millennia. By restricting technological diversity in the name of control, you've created a galaxy-wide system with shared vulnerabilities. Her statement caused a ripple of consternation among the founding species representatives, but nods of recognition from many others. Earth proposes an alternative approach. Instead of centralizing our defense through the Council's standardized systems, we should embrace technological diversity. Each species has unique approaches to science, to problem-solving, to warfare. Together, we present the Heralds with not one target, but hundreds of different challenges to overcome. The Quarthy representative's crystalline form vibrated with indignation. This is precisely why control is necessary. Uncoordinated responses will lead to chaos, to wasted resources, to gaps in our defenses. Not uncoordinated, Lori countered. Collaborative but diverse. Earth offers its independent developments, particularly our adaptive shielding and alternative communication systems, to any species who wishes to implement them. In return, we ask for the freedom to incorporate viable technologies from others, without council restriction. Zarelian, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. Commander Winter's proposal has merit. The historical records from previous cycles indicate that the Herald's advance slowed when encountering unexpected resistance. Because they had to adapt to new challenges, Kate added. Their patterns show signs of learning, of developing countermeasures to specific technologies. The more diverse our technologies, the more resources they must expend to overcome them. The debate raged for hours, with the founding species reluctant to relinquish their control over galactic technology. But as reports continued to arrive, showing the Herald's advance accelerating, pragmatism began to overcome tradition. Finally, Zarelian called for a vote, not on Earth's proposal specifically, but on a temporary suspension of technology transfer restrictions during the crisis. The measure passed, though the inner ring voted unanimously against it. As the council disbanded to implement the new approach, Lori found herself face-to-face with Zarelian in a corridor outside the chamber. You have achieved in 3 months what reformers within the council have sought for millennia, he said. His skin, a complex mosaic of colors. The suspension of technology restrictions may save countless lives in the coming conflict. If we survive this crisis, Lori replied, the council cannot return to its old ways. The galaxy deserves better governance. Perhaps. Zarelian's compound eyes studied her with new respect. But first, we must ensure there is a galaxy to govern. The response to the Void Heralds became a chaotic but increasingly effective collaboration between species that had previously interacted only through council channels. Earth's adaptive shielding proved remarkably effective against the Herald's energy patterns, while Vulgarian propulsion systems allowed ships to maneuver in ways the Heralds couldn't predict. Nithar sensor technology, previously restricted by council mandate, provided crucial early warnings of Herald movements. Within weeks, a patchwork defense had emerged, not the elegant, centralized response the council had planned for millennia, but a constantly evolving network of technologies and tactics that the Heralds struggled to counter. The first major confrontation occurred at the Araleth Nexus, a major junction of trade routes near the Council's middle territories. A Herald fleet of 30 crystalline vessels approached the system, their energy fields already disrupting local communications. Earth contributed a squadron of ships equipped with the latest independent developments, propulsion systems 140% more efficient than Council standard, weapons based on principles Kate's team had developed free from Council restrictions, and communication systems immune to the Herald's disruption. Maria Rodriguez, now Captain Rodriguez, commanded the Earth contingent. Herald vessels approaching from 3 vectors, she reported during the joint briefing with commanders from 26 species. Their energy fields are scanning our defenses. The Nithar commander, a being of living metal named Sorvex, nodded. They're probing for weaknesses, as expected. Our combined fleet presents them with an unprecedented diversity of targets. Then let's give them something they've never seen before, Maria replied, a fierce grin on her face. Execute Operation Mosaic. The Allied fleet split into smaller tactical groups, each employing different technologies and approaches. Some engaged directly, testing weapons against the crystalline hulls. Others performed complex maneuvers designed to confuse the Herald's targeting systems. Earth ships deployed special probes that mimicked and amplified the Herald's own energy patterns back at them. For the first time in recorded history, the Void Heralds hesitated. Their perfectly coordinated movements became erratic as they encountered resistance they couldn't immediately adapt to. When a Vulgarian ship managed to penetrate a Herald vessel's energy field using a phase-shifting technology developed independently from Council standards, the entire Herald formation seemed to shudder in response. "They're communicating," Maria observed, watching the energy patterns shift rapidly between vessels, reassessing their approach. The battle raged for hours, with losses on both sides. 3 Earth ships were destroyed, along with vessels from a dozen other species. But the Heralds lost 7 of their crystalline ships, an unprecedented victory against a force that had previously seemed unstoppable. When the remaining Herald vessels finally retreated, the Allied commanders couldn't contain their elation. Centuries of Council-enforced cooperation had never produced the kind of genuine camaraderie that emerged from this shared triumph. "Earth's adaptive shielding saved my flagship twice," Sorvex told Maria, his metallic form glinting with what she recognized as their version of pride. "My people were denied this technology for centuries because the Council deemed us not ready for such advancements. And your phase-shifting approach is revolutionary," Maria replied. "We need to incorporate that into our next generation of vessels." As reports of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, the political implications became clear. The Council's monopoly on security and technology had been broken not just by Earth's withdrawal, but by the practical demonstration that collaboration between equals produced better results than centralized control. Over the next month, the Allied forces pushed the Heralds back from populated regions in a series of increasingly coordinated actions. Each engagement provided new data, new adaptations, new tactics that the Heralds struggled to counter. The Council's role diminished from central authority to mere coordinator, with individual species contributing their unique approaches to a growing alliance. 5 months after Earth's withdrawal from the Council, Lori Winters stood before a different kind of assembly. Representatives from 78 species had gathered on Earth, not in a hierarchical chamber, but in a circular forum where all seats were equidistant from the center. This was the first formal meeting of what was being called the Galactic Alliance. "We gather today not as rulers and subjects, not as senior and junior partners, but as equals facing common challenges," Lori began. "The Void Heralds have been driven back to the Galactic Rim, but they will return. Next time, we will be better prepared, not through centralized control, but through genuine cooperation." Xerillian, present not as High Speaker, but as the Xerillian representative, watched with an unreadable expression. His position among his own people had been weakened by the Council's failures, but he had emerged as a voice for reform within the founding species. "The proposed alliance charter before you contains no hierarchies based on longevity in space, no restrictions on technological development, save those necessary for common safety, and no central authority with veto power over member decisions." The charter had been drafted by a committee representing 20 diverse species, from former Council members to independents who had never joined the older organization. Its fundamental principles emphasized collaboration over control, diversity over standardization, and transparency over secrecy. Article 1 establishes that all member species retain their sovereignty and independence. Lori continued. "Alliance decisions require consensus or supermajority approval, depending on the issue at hand. No species can be compelled to participate in actions against their will." The debate that followed was spirited, but constructive. Former Council species raised concerns about security, about resource allocation, about dispute resolution. Earth and other independent-minded worlds expressed wariness about any structures resembling the Council's hierarchies. Xerillian, when he finally spoke, surprised many. The Council served its purpose for 50,000 years. It maintained a form of peace, a form of order. But it failed to adapt, failed to trust, failed to recognize the strength that comes from diversity rather than uniformity. His skin shifted to a serene blue-green Lori had never seen before. The Xerilians will support this alliance charter, with the hope that it represents not just a reaction against the Council's failings, but a genuine evolution in how spacefaring species interact. After 3 days of negotiation and amendment, the charter was approved by 75 of the 78 species present. The Galactic Alliance was born, not from conquest or coercion, but from the shared experience of facing an existential threat together. 5 years later, Lori stood at the viewport of the new Alliance headquarters, a space station orbiting a neutral star system. Unlike the imposing Hall of Worlds, this facility emphasized openness and accessibility, with architecture that incorporated elements from dozens of member species. "Admiral Winters," a voice called from behind her. Lori turned to see Kate Murphy approaching, now serving as Earth's science liaison to the Alliance. "Still not used to that title," Lori admitted with a smile. "How are the new detection systems performing?" "Better than projected. The combined approaches from 17 different research traditions have created something none of us could have developed alone." Kate joined her at the viewport. "The Void Heralds won't catch us unprepared again." "And the Council?" "Down to 28 member species and declining. Most have either joined the Alliance or declared independence." Kate shook her head. "They're still arguing about whether to reform or dissolve entirely." Lori gazed out at the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. "When we left the Council, I never imagined it would lead to all this. I just wanted humanity to have the freedom to determine its own path. Instead, you helped free half the galaxy," Kate said with a chuckle. "Not bad for a species that's only been in space for a few centuries." A notification chimed on Lori's communication device. "The General Assembly is convening. 142 member species now, more than the Council had at its height." As they walked toward the assembly chamber, they passed representatives from dozens of worlds, some familiar from Council days, others new species that had emerged from isolation once the restrictive membership requirements were eliminated. Xerilian waited near the entrance, now serving as one of the rotating facilitators of the Alliance. His skin glowed with a vibrant teal that Lori had come to recognize as contentment. "Admiral Winters, Director Murphy," he greeted them, all 4 arms extended in the gesture of equals. "I was just reflecting on our first meeting, 305 years after humanity joined the Council. How differently things might have proceeded if we had recognized then what we know now. That true strength comes from diversity, not uniformity," Lori suggested. "That, and the recognition that evolution requires change, sometimes painful, sometimes destructive, but ultimately necessary." Xerilian's compound eyes surveyed the gathering representatives. "The Council preserved a certain kind of stability for 50 millennia, but at the cost of stagnation. The Alliance embraces change, uncertainty, even occasional disorder. And is stronger for it," Kate added. "Indeed. The Void Heralds will return in another 50,000 years, as they always have. But they will face a galaxy united not by force or tradition, but by choice and mutual respect." As they entered the assembly chamber, Lori reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as an act of independence, perhaps even defiance, had transformed into something far more profound. A new model for galactic cooperation that preserved the uniqueness of each species, while creating something greater than the sum of its parts. The day humanity left the Galactic Council, everything had indeed collapsed, not into chaos, as many had feared, but into the raw materials from which a better future could be built.